Hello. Our story begins inside the wreckage of a building on one of the many floating platforms on Cato Neimoidia. From the fires crawled an injured Jedi Master. His ship was shot down by his clones, and as he moved about within the smoke, his breathing apparatus funneled out all the toxins around the area. Plo adjusted his eyes and moved for a tunnel of light on the other side. He felt his head as he moved through the smoke. Something terrible had happened, and it didn't just happen here. Master Plo slipped out of the small tunnel and saw his men, lining up in formation as an LAAT dropped them off. Commander Wolf, now under the influence of Order 66, was telling his men what to do. These were formations the clones and Plo had practiced for taking down General Grievous. It was sickening to even Plo to watch his brethren use tactics they planned for a warlord against their own general. Plo ducked back into the smoke, readjusting some of the knobs on the inside of his mask, making sure he could maintain breathing within the smoke for a longer period of time. Cato Neimoidia was likely the worst place to be in the galaxy during an event like this. Cato and Megiddo, in all fairness. The floating platforms provided an impossible escape for the Jedi. That moment made Plo think of his friend Ki-Adi-Mundi, and he felt a surge of pain rise within his head. He knelt over and forced his eyes closed, and he could see something horrific. It was a vision of death, destruction, and the end of his order. He was transported to various locations across the galaxy, as he felt each righteous member of their long-standing order face death at the hands of their brothers. The clone army had betrayed them. All these men they had spent several years protecting and serving alongside had flipped on them. Plo felt so many of his own brothers and sisters lose their lives at each moment. It was horrible. As a council member, it was his duty to protect them, and at that failure, he couldn't help but feel like he didn't deserve the luck to survive his own crash. But the Force willed his survival, and that had to be for a reason. As Plo was trying to escape, his head pulsated again. The Force dragged him through time and space. He could see the Jedi Temple under fire. He could hear younglings crying out in terror as their instructors guided them elsewhere inside the temple. There was no escape for them though. The sights were horrendous, but the sounds were sickening, even to a veteran Jedi Master such as himself. Plo stumbled through the smoke, placing his hand on fire by accident in the hazy blur he found his mind within. As he fell forward, he could see lava pits igniting, and by them were Skywalker and the facility. It reminded Plo of the mission Ahsoka and Anakin went on during the war, one where they recovered children of the Force from a Mustafar facility. Why would Anakin go back? That question had to wait. Plo had accidentally fallen out of the wreckage of the building, and as he did, his eyes landed on a collection of 104th troopers, and they raised their weapons. Plo spoke to them, telling them to lower their weapons. They need not be adversaries. The clones didn't even listen as they fired their blasters at their Jedi General, who dove out of the way, rolling on his shoulder and sliding to his feet, igniting his lightsaber and blocking shots back at the clones, intentionally avoiding them. They continued coming, and with more attention coming towards the sound of blaster fire, Plo needed to decide if he wanted to die a martyr or survive as a victim. He slid his saber from side to side, and caved. He blocked strikes back at his men, knocking them off their feet, some of them killed on impact, others injured. Plo saw Wolf and told him to stop this, but that didn't yield a result he wanted. The clone commander called to his wrist to bring the gunships, and from behind Plo, the roar of a couple LAATs could be heard rushing down towards him. He turned back as two of the gunships pulled around to the side, revealing a number of clone troopers with their weapons aimed at him. Both of the turned LAATs had their searchlights on Plo. A broadcast would be saved, so that the kamikaze Jedi could be shown to the galaxy upon his execution, paying for his crimes against the people of Cato Neimoidia. The third LAAT, in the middle, held two searchlights on the Jedi Master, and its gunners were primed to start firing. Commander Wolf told the Jedi traitor that he was ruled for termination under the Chancellor's Order, Executive Order 66. Plo raised his weapon and spun it slowly in his hands. The Chancellor was behind the war, and they hadn't seen it. Ridiculous. Plo looked at the clones and everything moved in slow motion for him. He could sense footsteps from the clones as they dug their feet into the ground. He could feel unsteadiness from troopers above him. He could feel the clicking of the rotators inside the LAATs, and he could sense the heartbeats of each clone slowly begin to increase. Whether they were full of mind and body in these actions or not, Plo needed to survive, even if that meant he was a victim of a plot. And tragically for his clone brethren, this did not mean that they were destined to survive this encounter. Wolf fired his blaster first, and the other clones followed suit, unloading everything they had at Plo's position. The Jedi General leapt backwards, slamming down on the cockpit of the middle of the gunship. He almost slid off the sleek windows of the vessel, but he jabbed his lightsaber into the edge before the cockpit, using it to pull him up. This inadvertently caused the cockpit to burst open, and Plo used the Force to lift the clones out and throw them at the platform, where the other men were. the clones landed, both almost getting killed in the blaster fire that now peppered the LA-18. Plo used his momentum to jump to the other vessel, as the other one, still with 2 gunners inside of it, the one that Plo just came from, started to spiral out of control and clip the other LAT that Plo wasn't on. Plo was able to now deduce that these clones were not themselves. An explosion burst next to him as the other 2 LAATs detonated on impact. Plo's blade blocked shots back at the clones as he slid down into the bay of the gunship and extinguished his lightsaber, throwing his hands into the clones, beating them up, without causing too much damage. One was thrown into another, the remaining ones were knocked out by various methods as Plo turned towards the clones that were now gathering strength in numbers. Where to now? Plo leaned behind cover as blaster fire killed another clone inside the bay, throwing him out of the ship and tumbling down hundreds of feet to his eventual death. Plo peered around the corner. There had to be a way out of this. The LAAT he was currently in started to lose control, and the recorder bot that was watching all of this continued to watch the Jedi Master, who now leapt out of the gunship and with the force slammed down, creating a disruption in the ground, throwing all the men off of their feet. He turned back and saw the men inside the LAAT get thrown to the other side of the ship. Luckily, the doors were still closed. He used the force to guide the ship down into the surface as it detonated, but not fully. Plo ignited his lightsaber again, using the force where he could pull the weapons of the clones out of their hands. One of his men was on fire and used the force to quell the raging inferno from their armor. He slid back around, defying the odds, using every piece of skill he had, before coming across Wolf and throwing him through the glass of a building nearby. Plo ran back to the raging fire of the LAAT. All the men he knocked out were in danger. He quickly, while he had the time, got the men out of the bay and then removed the unconscious pilots. He would come to regret this decision though. As Plo got the last pilot out of the LAAT, it exploded, sending him tumbling across the ground. When he looked up, ARC 170s led by Captain Jag were coming for him. Plo got to his feet, now beginning to get really tired. Typically he wouldn't be so winded, but Plo was doing overtime by knocking the clones unconscious and trying not to kill them. Plo could tell that they weren't within their right minds, and that wasn't his fault or their fault. Maybe he didn't have to die a martyr, but he would not be killing his own men. As the Republic fighter sped down towards him, his lightsaber ignited again. Despite the recording bot displaying this quote-unquote death of this insurgent Jedi Master to the galaxy, it wasn't going as well as it was planned. The commanding officer of the fleet ordered the recording just to be sure everyone saw that Plo kamikazed the building, and if he survived, then the galaxy would see him as a monster. This officer was also a clone, hence the treatment of an otherwise fair Jedi Master. Plo blocked shots from the arcs back at them, until a torpedo slammed down in front of him, launching him from his feet and ripping a hole in the platform. One of the arcs was shot down due to his deflections, as it slammed into a piece of architecture holding the platform up. Plo watched a hole open up in the ground, as his unconscious men, unable to defend themselves or do anything about it, were sucked into it, left to die to fall damage. The Jedi Master got to his feet when another blast came down before him, throwing him back again, sending another couple clones off the platform. Plo turned over and launched his lightsaber through the air. It clipped the arc, sending it off into the distance as Plo moved to save what clones he could from an unfortunate death. After they were saved, another couple LAATs flew down towards his position and landed. Plo, instead of fighting this time, knew that to survive he needed to escape. He threw himself into the still burning building he crashed into and sped along the interior walls, using them as a guide as he lay his hand on them. From the little pockets of light still left, he could see tanks rolling by with a number of clones. Once there was an opening, the Jedi Master slipped out of a crack in the wall and looked down both sides of the corridor, and he saw it was clear. He sped to a nearby civilian hangar and found himself a couple more clones restricting takeoffs. Plo walked through, again presenting an offer, a chance for them to surrender, and when they raised their blasters, he lifted them off the ground and threw them across the bays. He then cut the hyperspace locks off of the landing gears of a ship he wanted to use. It was faster and would get him off-world. Plo knew that Coruscant was lost, and so he retreated back to the vision he had following his crash. He knew that he needed to go to Mustafar. The Force might always be in motion, but if Skywalker was truly behind this, then he would end up on Mustafar as it was. Plo piloted the ship out of the hangar bay, and was able to use cloud cover to shield his escape. Thanks to the clones searching the ground, they weren't expecting a civilian transport to leave. Civilians weren't supposed to be leaving the system at the moment, but thanks to Plo knocking out the guards, he could abandon Cato Neimoidia without a problem. It was very hard for Master Plo to refuse going back to Coruscant. Even with the civilian transport, he knew that if the situation was the same there, then fighting off the Coruscant Guard in 501st was not in his best interests. If his vision was correct, which he believed it was, then this is where he needed to be. Plo pressed the hyperspace lever forward and the ship launched into hyperspace. As it left, and the blue lanes of hyperspace travel lit up the viewport, he slid down into his seat and closed his eyes. He could feel the darkness, and it was rising. It was powerful, and it would be the end of the Jedi Order if the head of a snake was not cut off. Plo's mind drifted away into another vision. He could see the rise of the Empire, and the complete and total destruction of the Jedi Order under the Sith. The worst part is, the same government that outlawed the Sith would fully support one who took their mantle as their leader and disintegrated under his control. When Palpatine came to from his vision, he was looking down at the fiery ball below him. Mustafar was the name of the planet, and he was going in to prepare for Anakin's arrival. If Skywalker came here, then he was who Plo's vision told him Anakin became. His civilian transport landed on the platforms, and he exited through the bay doors. Plo could see a couple battle droids here, which confused him. The previous facility present at the planet sunk into the lava, but they seemingly rebuilt it. Plo walked around and entered this new establishment, finding an array of battle droids and cutting them into pieces before entering the main facility. He was shocked. How could he be so lucky and unlucky at the same time? He just found the key to ending the entire war, but the war just so happened to be already over. Plo raised his lightsaber and pointed it at the Separatist Council, telling them to surrender. One of the leading voices, Newt Gunray, pleaded with Plo to let them live. The Jedi General rolled his eyes. He wasn't going to kill them, but he did want them to answer some very important questions for him. If they obliged, then he would personally let them off easily. Of course, being that these fools were totally incompetent, they didn't consider that Plo letting them off easy didn't translate to the Republic, now called Empire, letting them off with a pass. They told him everything he wanted to know, the information of which being that the Sith Lord, Darth Sidious, wanted them here. Lord Vader was coming here to protect them, and they would survive the end of the war. Plo knew that Sidious wasn't saving them. He was giving his new apprentice a chance to use the dark side, by murdering more innocents. Well, they weren't technically innocent, but don't think about that. Plo told them that he wanted them to gather up inside the office room, and each of the members ferried in there. He explained to them that the Sith were deceivers, and this council was a means to an end. They had no place in the coming era, so if they wanted to survive, they would stay inside of here and remain silent. Just as Plo locked the door, he heard a beeping. Lord Vader had arrived. What a shame. Plo walked to the edge of the room and stopped. He'd rather surprise Skywalker. He almost went out to face him on the platforms, but he'd rather do this in here. When Anakin walked in the door, his hood was raised, and Plo pitied him. What a terrible turn. Plo told Skywalker that it was done. It came to an end here, and there was no reason to continue this onslaught. Skywalker lowered his hood, surprised that Master Plo survived. He told Plo to step aside. This didn't need to end with his death. This was a threat, and Plo did not plan on stepping out of the way. The Separatist Council deserved punishment, but only in a just way. Execution was not the Jedi way, and Skywalker would not be fulfilling his master's orders. Anakin ignited his lightsaber, telling Plo that he killed Sindralik and Shaak Ti without a struggle. He had no fear of facing him. Plo's mind was brought to the loss of his friends. They were too good for this galaxy, and as he thought of their untimely deaths, Plo, himself, felt anger rise within. He knew that neither Sin or Shaak Ti were prepared. Anakin had the jump on them, and he was arrogantly boasting about 2 victories that likely wouldn't have been if they were actually ready. Plo believed that. Why would they expect that one of their own would betray them? The Jedi Master ignited his lightsaber. He could not allow this to continue any further. Anakin drove his weapon forward and it interlocked with Plo. Both duelists were aggressive fighters. Their forms focused on offense, and after the first strike, they started trading blows. Plo had watched Anakin spar. Skywalker had seen maybe one spar between Plo and another Jedi. But unlike his duel with Sindralik, Plo was actually ready, and Plo wasn't defending anyone other than himself. Their lightsabers collided again and again. Skywalker slipped to the side and thrusted his blade upwards, which Plo blocked. He stepped back and got into a quick power stance before driving his lightsaber at him. Despite being one of the more pure Jedi in the Order, there was a trickle of darkness seeping into Plo's skin, and it was infecting his fighting style. Plo couldn't stop thinking about Shaak Ti or Sindralik, 2 Jedi he watched grow up, and 2 Jedi he had been friends with longer than Anakin was even alive. And he was sick to his stomach. He was frustrated with the situation, and he got angry. Anakin felt this shift within Plo, and it was jarring. Never could he imagine the purified Plo Koon slip into darkness. Plo thrusted his lightsaber forward and it knocked Anakin off balance. They interlocked again, no one in defense, both in offense. There wasn't a second to lose for either of them, and with Plo starting to gain a slight upper hand with the dark side, he unleashed a barrage of strikes that lifted Skywalker from his feet. Anakin slipped into a control panel behind him as Plo stopped. This wasn't him, and it wasn't right. Anakin called the old Jedi a fool. He had the opportunity to win the fight once and for all, but he didn't. Plo looked down to his hands, which were now trembling because of the darkness, and he looked back to Skywalker, surveying the young Sith apprentice. He told Anakin that resisting the dark side took strength, the kind that he and his arrogant master didn't have. They would never win, and their curse in the galaxy would be eradicated. That, unluckily for Skywalker, started with him. Their blades collided again. Now back in the light, Plo could feel himself losing control over the little advantage he had. But as a Jedi, as a master, as a counselor, the foundation of a new order would not be forged in the blood drawn from the Sith through anger. Victory would come through harmony and balance. Plo deflected a strike and slipped back. Master Plo understood that to keep Anakin in a confined area would be stealing his thunder. Anakin needed visual confirmation that he was winning to support his arrogance, and without it, he wasn't feeling that he was living up to his full power. Plo could sense this internal shift within Skywalker, and he preyed on it. Due to both duelists using aggressive forms, there was no running. They did not leave the room their conflict started in. Plo continued to ground Anakin, and this is where he started to prey on Anakin's self-doubt. To win this duel, he needed to verbally assault Anakin as well, and it came following their engagement in the middle of the control room again. Plo told Anakin that all of his power was for nothing. To kill two unsuspecting Jedi Masters was not victory, it was cowardice. To attack a temple full of children, instructors, and monks was not prideful, it was fearful. Sidious and the Sith feared what the Jedi were, because they could never be more than that. Plo shoved Anakin back into a table and shoved his blade forward, locking it against Anakin's. Plo told Anakin that he would never be more than fearful. Plo spun away, knowing that Anakin would attempt a vile move, which came. Anakin tried to use his own iteration of Trikada, and it didn't work, because Plo pulled away. Master Plo pointed to Skywalker. All of his potential, all of his opportunities to be more were squandered because he was nothing more than a slave to the Sith. Plo almost felt bad for saying that. It wasn't nice. But Skywalker at this point did not deserve very nice. Master Plo watched Anakin subconsciously question himself. In his mind, he saw his defeat of Master Sindralik and Shaak Ti as triumph, like he was a champion, but it was not that. He jumped Sindralik when he was teaching his students and walking around with them. He killed Shaak Ti in the middle of a meditation. He was a coward. Anakin fought back against these thoughts and raged forward, trying to seize a kill on a Jedi Master. Plo was a true opponent, one that had time and mental fortitude to prepare for his encounter. He was not an unsuspecting Jedi inside the temple. He was a true threat. Across the galaxy, Palpatine could sense that Lord Vader was in trouble, and began to leave his office. On his way to the landing dock, he'd be confronted by the Grand Master, Yoda. This, of course, meant that Padme had arrived at Mustafar. Instead of seeing Anakin run out to her, she worried of what could have happened to him, and so she got up and moved out of her starship and into the facilities. Obi-Wan would trail right behind her. Inside the chambers, Anakin swung forward aggressively, trying to end this ridicule. Plo avoided the strike, this time using the Force to throw Anakin's hand with his momentum, forcing Anakin to strike the wall and slip off balance. Plo had another chance to once again end this fight, but he couldn't. Plo raised his lightsaber, switching forms and defending himself from Anakin's aggressive assault. Plo also knew a key to winning this fight was conserving as much energy as he could. He had plenty of time to do that inside the ship on the way to Mustafar, but Anakin was not doing that here, and because he had lost his focus in the verbal onslaught, he couldn't really consciously stop himself from reacting. As the younglings used to tease him, he was a slave to his emotions, and Plo took advantage of that. The worst part for Plo is he wanted to believe that there was something good inside of Anakin's heart, but he just couldn't see it. The vitriol of the Jedi way, his rancid demeanor, and his poisoned mind told the Jedi Master that Ahsoka's teacher was gone. And she probably was too because of this heinous monster. Plo steadied himself, waiting for Anakin to strike. Skywalker told Plo that he would kill him. He would kill every Jedi if it meant he could reach the power he needed to control everything. Plo shook his head. Killing younglings, Padawans, and teachers would not grant him such power. His chance to truly understand the Force was lost. He was lost. As Anakin prepared to rebuttal, he could see from the corner of his eyes his wife. Padme had just heard him confess his crimes. Plo then saw her and panicked. If Anakin directed his anger towards her, he could kill her. Padme asked Anakin if it were true, and he shook his head, trying to prepare a lie. But Plo's look, even without a visible mouth or eyes, told her everything she needed to know. It was true. Plo couldn't bring himself to kill Anakin, and she could see it. The monster that lived within him, that terrified her, multiple times had come out, and unlike those multitude of times that she had seen this monster before, it did not go away. She backed away slowly as Anakin told her to not go anywhere. He would destroy this Jedi fool, and they could run away, make their lives the way they wanted them to be. This sense of delusion started to arise from within him. Padme feared it, and Plo was going to stop it right here. As Anakin took a step towards Padme, Plo lobbed his lightsaber at Anakin's feet. Skywalker looked over and smiled, telling Plo that he would never hurt anyone he loved. But now, he would exterminate Plo's life. The Jedi Master raised both of his hands, and Anakin swung in aggressively. As he did, a second lightsaber ignited and blocked Skywalker. Obi-Wan shoved Anakin backwards as Plo pulled his weapon with the Force, and moved himself to the other side, placing himself between Anakin and Padme. Skywalker's face tensed. They would both die, it seemed. On Coruscant, instead of a battle throughout the massive Senate chambers, Yoda was able to isolate Sidious in the corridors of the building. This worked in the Grand Master's favor. However, they were now being pursued by clones of the Coruscant Guard. Yoda was able to keep most of them at bay, while fighting Sidious, who, like in his duel against Windu, was in a constant retreat. Sidious and Yoda blasted each other with their lightsabers, each of them attempting to get the final strike on the other, and end this generational conflict once and for all. Yoda lunged into the air, knocking the defending Palpatine backwards. The Sith Lord was furious. He had enough of this fight, blasting electricity at the Jedi Grand Master, who stopped it with his hands. As he did, clones behind him started to form a firing line and opened up at the small Jedi Master. Yoda turned his other hand back and held it out, stopping each and every single blaster bolt in the air. Sidious smiled, forcing all of his power down into Yoda's hand, seeing the little green Jedi start to buckle. Yoda reeled in pain, holding off so much energy on both sides until he broke down on one. Sidious knocked Yoda over and started laughing, as the Grand Master burned up for a short moment. Sidious told him that his life would mean nothing, that it was the end for a dead cause. Sidious pulled his lightsaber and raised it above his head, and upon doing so, he saw all the blaster bolts piling up. Yoda, despite his pain, hadn't stopped holding them at bay. He released his grip, and the bolts fled over Yoda's head and shredded Sidious, hoisted by his own petard. The very clones he created were his very downfall. Yoda tried to get up, but as he did, the clones surrounded him and fired down on him. He moved, but not fast enough, getting clipped a couple of times before executed, just like their now dead Emperor. Back on Mustafar, Kenobi and Plo smashed their blades against Skywalkers, who felt the challenge of the two Jedi Masters bearing down on him. His overconfidence wasn't helping him, and he was beginning to struggle. Now that Padme was nowhere to be seen, his rage was rising. But the Jedi Masters, now in full control over their own bodies, were able to hold their own. Anakin swung relentlessly, but after already having toiled with Plo, he was struggling to keep the same energy he started with. The dark side rewarded short-term results, and without them coming, the long-term burden of the dark side was seeping through him. Anakin swung against Plo, who parried and kicked him forward, only for Anakin to swing back and block Obi-Wan, who was still using his defensive form. Anakin shoved Kenobi back and charged Master Plo, jumping up and slamming down on his blade. Plo used Anakin's momentum against him, using his lightsaber to guide Anakin to the ground, where Plo elbowed Skywalker in the jaw, throwing him backwards. As Anakin turned around, Plo threw his lightsaber straight through Anakin's back. Obi-Wan was coming back around to support Plo, but then watched Anakin's face fill with shock. Plo didn't mean to do that. It was an accident. He called out Anakin's name first before Obi-Wan did next. Despite them not having a verbal agreement, Obi-Wan and Plo weren't planning on killing Skywalker. It just happened to come through total accident. Anakin fell to his knees and he coughed heavily. His lightsaber fell from his hands and rolled along the ground. Plo and Obi-Wan still kept their distance as he fell flat on his chest. Plo grabbed Anakin's weapon and placed it on his belt, before feeling for a pulse. He was gone. Plo felt his own head. Maybe it was the right accident, or maybe it was the wrong one. But he had hoped that it would lead to some positive outcome. Obi-Wan's voice broke as he apologized to Anakin. He was sorry for all of this. It was never meant to end like this. Obi-Wan's hand pressed against his student's back, as he rolled him over on top of him, and held him in his arms. Anakin's eyes were already closed, concealing if Anakin died with blue or yellow eyes. A mystery neither Jedi wanted to know the answer to. Plo leaned against the communications table, and his lightsaber slipped from his hand. It wasn't supposed to end like that. Anakin was wearing down. Who knew what would come after this fight, but still, neither Jedi wanted this outcome. Plo stood over Obi-Wan and Anakin until Kenobi was ready to go. Plo told him that he would go with the Separatist Council. Kenobi and Padme should get to a safe location. Obi-Wan informed Master Plo that Yoda had survived, and went to face Palpatine. They agreed on coordinates to meet up at when they were done their separate tasks. For Obi-Wan, it was meeting up with Yoda and taking care of Padme. For Plo, it was dropping off the Separatist Council with some trusted allies. The following days would be chaotic. Padme would survive her pregnancy. While Anakin force choking her certainly wouldn't have helped, it was the fact that despite Anakin breaking her heart and almost killing her that way, a conscious Padme was able to fill that hole in her heart with friends and her children. Obi-Wan told her that she couldn't abandon those children. She needed to stay strong for them, and therefore she was. Yoda would never arrive at Polis Massa, and the Jedi would return to Tython. Representative Jar Jar Binks, who was a longtime ally of the Order, was able to both save Kelleran back in Grogu, but also handle the capturing and transfer of the Separatist Council from Plo Koon. This allowed the Jedi to sneak off to Tython, where Obi-Wan, the twins, Kelleran, Grogu, and Plo would arrive. With Sidious dead, Padme was able to return to the Senate, but first, she needed the extra care of the Republic Medical Facility on Coruscant, which would help her get ready for work in the coming weeks. The reason she separated from the twins was because she knew she'd have a lot of work on Coruscant and didn't want to be filled up with time and not be able to be there for her children. At least they were there with someone she trusted. Palpatine's and Yoda's deaths would be shared galaxy-wide, and while there would be a lot of questioning about the death of the Emperor, it would become clear through other released footage, such as the one of Plo's fight on Cato Neimoidia, that the Jedi were betrayed and scapegoated for something far beyond their control. This wasn't the Senate rallying around them, but death often has a weird way of immortalizing individuals. Without Palpatine to try and influence the Senate, and with footage from the temple becoming visible for people around the galaxy to see, the political disliking of the Jedi was replaced with total disgust. Many within the Senate didn't want the Jedi to have a stake in the Republic, but what they saw was too far, and Palpatine was behind it. This did not alienate support for Palpatine. What did were the multitude of confessions that came from the Separatist Council. This council was going away for life, but they were able to reveal that Sidious had inner workings with the Separatist movement, influencing them and corrupting them to join a war effort. And while Sidious, for those not paying attention, as it turns out, is Palpatine. The Republic had an identity crisis, and the Jedi had to find refuge for their 100 or so remaining members. The era of darkness had begun. 14 years after the execution of Order 66, Grandmaster Plo was seated with his legs crossed inside of a meadow, just outside the new temple on Tython. Instead of resurrecting the past relic, a new temple was created, and it was here where 250 Jedi now resided. Their order had survived the Sith. Maul was gone, destroyed by his own criminal organization. The Sith were dead. Those who swore loyalty to them, like Grand Inquisitor, were also killed. Master Plo was greeted by two of his students, Luke and Leia. They knew the truth of their father, and they were enlisted as full-time Jedi. They understood what Plo had done, and they were trained to respect the Jedi Code. They shared an emotional connection to their mother, which was beautiful for all of them. This new Jedi Order wasn't much different from the one that fell 14 years before. The code was more lax, and it was because there were so many traumatized children that made up the Order itself. Most Masters and Knights were killed during Order 66. Ahsoka also served inside this order, and like Plo and Obi-Wan, she oversaw the training of the Skywalker twins. Master Kenobi served alongside Plo and they rebuilt the Order from scratch, with the help of the lead archivist Jocasta Nu. The children were excelling, and two lifelong friends, Obi-Wan and Plo, were thriving, even after the trauma they had survived. The Republic was now led with competent leadership, and the role of Chancellor was eradicated. Padme led an executive branch, which was made up of 13 council members. These members were under checks and balances from the Senate, but not one of them had the power Palpatine once had. Combined, they didn't even have half the power he controlled during the Clone War. Padme spent a lot of time with her children, even if it meant traveling from Coruscant to Tython to do so. But the journey wasn't long, just a short jump away. Everyone was thriving, and despite the loss of Anakin hitting those closest to him hardest, it was his death, and that of the Sith, that the galaxy could finally drag itself out of an era of darkness, and find rebirth in the new hope that covered the galaxy. And that, my friends, is our story. Again, special thanks to all the patrons: Benjamin Wells, Ozpin, Darth Vitiate, Seju Jagger, Groot36, Hunter Belden, Rosebird, Angel Dust, Alexander Reese, The Beginning and End, Jango Fett Clone, Nick5098, Ben Ingram, The Big Red Pure Mark, Diamond Constant, Darth Nemesis, Lord Tib, CC2024, Gallivan Gaming, Tristan, Mandalore, Sir William 1767, Darth Revan, Granite Bane, Laliant, Sky Guy, Penguin, Colin Rooney, Shark Midori, RJ38, Nick, Michael Erlinger, The Last Jedi, Apollo, Weewa670, Anakin Stank Runner, CT7567, Toaster Oven, Oz of Oz, Darth Nox, The Eternal Padawan, Joshua Tem, Johnny DeGuin, Sense Skeleton, Jedi Sloth, Mr. E Gamer, Lord Callie, Youngling Slayer 66, Mammoth Studios, Anakin003, Lord Draken, 46 Star Wars, Erebus, Rex the Wolf, The Man with 3 First Names, Darkseid46, Baron Joshua, and Lord Deadwing. For supporting the channel, smash that like button. Let's talk about this story. So, a little bit on the darker end, a little bit more tragic, and I think that was the way it needed to go. So much of the fight between Plo and Anakin, I think, would be aggressive. I think Plo having a mental fortitude would allow him the chance to survive the fight. I'm not saying it would be overly on his side, overly on Anakin's side. I think it'd be pretty evenly matched on Mustafar. But I think what would really make it evenly matched is how Obi-Wan is able to defeat Anakin is through conscientious thought, not being totally arrogant, being full of mind and body during the fight. I really wanted to highlight the fact that I don't think Plo would want to kill Anakin. And so him killing Anakin is completely by accident. When he kills him, he's throwing his lightsaber at him just to throw him off guard, but it doesn't work. It just ends up killing him because he doesn't realize he turned Anakin around. And I wanted that shock to feel present, and almost as if it was the will of the Force. So the will of the Force, like, throughout the story, the will of the Force's influence is that Plo survived the crash, and he's like, well, I have to survive for a reason. And then he has a vision of Mustafar, and that's why he ends up there. So it's like, the will of the Force is acting through Plo, seeing that Anakin had been corrupted. So, I hope you all enjoyed a little bit of a different tone here. I love you all, spread the love, and always remember, my friends, may the Force be with you.